Hello, my name is Leonard Lang. I'm president of Upper Room Consulting, and today I want to talk about handling fees. I'm one of the few people that have what they call institutional history on this program. I go back to the beginning. Therefore, I've seen all the changes and unintended consequences that have happened with this program pertaining to CIP, that was Convenience Incentive Payment, the original subsidy that morphed into the handling fee. Now, in the beginning, I think the subsidy was put into the program at the behest of an out-of-state company called Invipco, Environmental Products Company of Virginia. And basically what we did with that subsidy is we helped them capitalize the construction of machines that they did not have that were necessary to serve the public. In essence, they went into business and were hired by grocery stores to serve the public, and they couldn't do it because they didn't have the machines. The grocery stores, and after a while, were forced into handling this stuff manually, which they did not want to do. The original Convenience Incentive Payment subsidy had a 3-year sunset clause, so after 3 years it was supposed to end. But we just kept going back to the till. The recyclers that got this money were not going to give it up. It was like an injection of heroin. They wanted to keep it. And so we kept going back and going back and going back. Eventually it turned into the handling fee mechanism. The problems that we started to encounter were that we were afraid of these subsidized businesses using that subsidy to take away business from legitimate unsubsidized businesses. And so we put some restrictions on that. That was called the predatory pricing mechanism. And it was put into statute, and then regulations developed from that. Basically what it was supposed to do was to prevent a subsidized recycler from paying the public more than they would receive in redemption, reimbursement, and processing payment. That meant that they were using scrap values and handling fees to outcompete the non-subsidized recyclers. Back then it was a man by the name of Joe Massey and I, we were the folks that represented the ISRI legislative team, and we thought we came up with a mechanism that would prevent any abuse. Little did we know that in time and with changes, unintended consequences, this subsidy is now being used to manipulate the industry. And that's what we want to show you right now.
This is Public Resources Code Section 14588. Note that handling fees paid shall only be used to offset the unique costs, and that those fees may not be expended for the purpose of engaging in unfair and predatory competition. Now, I'm going to show you data that shows that they have been. And we're going to see that the department has done nothing. Now, they may say that they don't have authority, but we need to fix that. In essence, we're going to show that these fees have been paid to the predominant convenience zone operators for the express purposes of using them in a predatory manner. Now, I have spoken with branch chiefs within CalRecycle, and the top management has spent a lot of time with the department ensuring that they understand the law to its full extent. And I believe that they've been able to figure out how to use it in a predatory manner. I've just gone from section 14588 of the Public Resources Code, which says that the handling fees are not supposed to be used in a predatory manner and only to cover the extraordinary costs of operating grocery store recycling centers. Now, this column shows ads that were run in the Penny Saver starting in 2012. And what we can see is that the two largest handling fee recipients, Next Cycle and rePlanet, are advertising extensively in the penny saver, and not only are they advertising high rates, those rates are affecting competition. Here we can see rePlanet says that they're going to meet all competitors' coupons, they pay the highest rates, and they got a cute little lady saying bring your stuff here. Over here, $2 a pound, accept all coupons. And if we zoom in, we can see what the expiration date is on each of these coupons. And in this case, we're looking at 2012 and November 13th, I believe it is. Now, coming down, we can see that not only are we paying high prices, we've got reward programs going, so you can enter to win $1,000. Now, the amount of advertising here was extensive, and one of the real questions that we should ask ourselves is, in the evaluation of the costs of these operators, are they getting the cost of their advertising covered by the subsidies? Is that a permissible cost? Not only do we want to look at advertising, we want to look at their lobbying costs, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But here we're in 2013. We can see next cycle is running full page color ads. This was the back page of the penny saver. That's an expensive ad, and it's being used to take competition away from those that are not subsidized. Now we can see here we're still running our promotions, still accepting all coupons, and paying $2 a pound, an exorbitant amount. Now we can see $1.95. Over here we can see some of the areas that are covered. $1.95, $1.95, and basically at $1.95 their costs are completely covered. Now we're going to go into the next year. This is 2014, and we can see how they can blanket an area. Buena Park, come down here, Bellflower, Downey, Riverside, Lakewood, Bellflower, Downey. But I want to note something. In 2014, for the most part, they started out at $1.90 a pound. Now, July 1st, 2014, the department came up with reverse vending machine only commingled rate. Okay? Now, what's the significance of that? It means that the reverse vending machine purchases can be used for a higher claiming of containers, a higher subsidy amount from the handling fee program. But we can see that once that started, rePlanet went back to $2 a pound and covering various areas. Now, these copies I got because I'm looking at my own penny saver, and I'm getting some from a client who does advertising. Now we're in 2015, and we can see Riverside area $2 a pound, over in Norco $2.10, back to Riverside, some different stores, $2 a pound. We can see Lakewood, Westminster, Bellflower, Lakewood, Westminster, Downey. All this is 2015. It's still being done. Now, we have a question. Is the money that rePlanet's being paid, is being subsidized, is that money going for not just purposes of outbidding, out advertising, outpaying their competition? And is there a reason for it? If we look at this commingled rate, There is no authority in statute for the department to expressly develop a commingled rate for reverse vending machines. That means that they've done this without authority. They've got no instructions to do this. This is how government runs amok in adding expense that taxpayers have to pay for. But one thing that we can determine through the modern wonder of technology, I've reviewed reports for rePlanet on their lobbying. In the 2013-14 legislative session, they paid out approximately $190,000 to lobby to a lobbyist, and the lobbyist mentions in that they worked on a few bills and that they lobbied CalRecycle. Now, all these people have received contributions. We're looking at about $60,000 in contributions, and we know that rePlanet is getting things that appear to put everybody else at risk. Now, I'm told by processors who are trying to compete with rePlanet. rePlanet has moved into vertical integration and is now acting as a processor, that they are paying prices that seem well above market and that they cannot compete with. I believe that this handling fee is also being used to subsidize processing. This is something that was never expected and never intended to be affected by the subsidies. We have a real problem here. Again, how would you like whatever business that you're in to have your competitor subsidized by the state and you're not? Think about it.
Now, going back to the purpose of the handling fee and the convenience incentive payment. Supposedly, these recycling centers that operated in the grocery store parking lots had expenses that were higher than any other recyclers. This wasn't true. In fact, we encouraged Chuck Calderon back in the late 80s, early 90s to carry a bill, and it was called the Convenience Zone Study Bill. What came out of it wasn't very good. We did hear from staff inside the department that those that were receiving it came in and tried to work their magic to prevent the truth from coming out, and personally I believe it happened. But if these recyclers had expenses that were higher than regular recyclers, including those that ran the same types of locations without subsidies, without handling fees, then why were their costs higher? How did they get higher? If they were higher, how can we pay these high prices? We're wasting the subsidy that we're getting. We're actually using it in a predatory manner to put our competition out of business. I believe that these companies have had a business strategy of putting as many of the small competitors out of businesses. These are mostly family-run operations. Sometimes they might have 5 or 6 or 7 of them, but generally speaking, they're little families that have 1 or 2 locations at most. Now, if they have to compete against those people who are subsidized, and many times they try to. I've seen where old line recyclers will run ads and pay as much or even a little more, thinking that they're better, they're smarter, they're sharper, they should be able to beat these people. I talk to them, they don't know that they're subsidized. This has become a serious problem in this program. Personally, I believe that paying these prices has been a magnet for out-of-state material to encourage those people who have created these organized rings in other states to bring more material in. Because this has created such competitive pressure. It raises the field of payments across all recyclers. Even those that might be distant from some of these recyclers still feel the pressure. their customers come in and say, well, so-and-so pays $2, why don't you? Are you screwing me? And in this business, our customers are very, very concerned about their money and their payment. They don't want to believe that anything's being tampered with or that they're being screwed in any way. So this has become a significant issue. Now, when we go beyond this, we need to ask ourselves a serious question. If the fund is going bankrupt, why are we continuing to pay these subsidies to these people if they really need them? It's a waste of millions of dollars. In fact, back in 2006, there was a bill, AB 3056. It was created by the Assembly Natural Resources Committee, and at the time there was a large surplus of money within the beverage container fund. I called this bill the Christmas tree because it gave away money in more ways than I could count. And one of the things that it did with handling fees is it removed the cap and the limit. The cap was a recycler couldn't receive more than $2,300 per month per location. And the limit was $35 million a year. For whatever reason, the legislature approved the Assembly Natural Resources Committee's bill, and everything was lifted. Recycling centers based on volume got paid based on volume now, and their subsidy checks might go from $2,300 a month to $7,000 to $10,000 to $15,000, $20,000, $30,000. Some of them exceeded $40,000 a month. Now what do we call that? We call it windfall profits. And companies like, at that time, Tomra, Norwegian company, there has been a history of foreign corporations feeding from the California trough. We started with Envipco. There was 2020, which was from Canada. Tomra was from Norway, and now we have rePlanet, which I believe is a finance group out of the Boston area with maybe a headquarters in Texas. Bottom line is they're not California companies. They're not taking this money and investing it in California. In the case of the small recyclers, it's not being invested in their homes, their families, their vehicles, their businesses. Not happening. Those profits leave the state. Where's the sustainability in that? I ask you. Now, the last thing we want to focus on is if we study the actions of Tomra and rePlanet, we can see that they have historically done a considerable amount of lobbying. And a lot of that lobbying in their reports is with CalRecycle. So what might be happening with the efforts of their lobbying? One of the things that I've been most concerned about is that the legislature made a significant change in statute, and recyclers up until 2013 were able to buy a mixture of redemption containers and non-redemption containers. Statute and in regulation is defined as commingled purchases. That means that I could buy beer bottles, soda bottles, and liquor and wine bottles, which were not in the program. But the goal of the program in the beginning was to increase recycling and reduce litter. And so it met the goals of the program. The statutory change made by CalRecycle put into a budget trailer bill, SB 96, eliminated the ability of recyclers to buy commingled containers. So what did that mean? That means that we recycle less. They were so concerned, according to their studies, they might save $3 to $7 million. They were so concerned about that, they were willing to reduce recycling significantly. And no one got hurt more than this than the glass industry. And the glass industry needs color-sorted glass because, number one, it reduces their costs. They have to put this glass into a furnace or a tank, And those things are very expensive. By using recycled glass, they extend the life of those furnaces. By using recycled glass, they can run at lower temperatures. When they run at lower temperatures, they reduce emissions. And these are good union jobs that may be leaving California because of decisions made by a department which really doesn't understand the significance of their actions that they take. So, what have we got? We've got the elimination of commingled purchases. Now, one thing that has been in the program since the beginning is that reverse vending machines, the type that Tomra, rePlanet, NextCycle use, and way back in the beginning in VIPCO, have never been able to distinguish between a California container and a non-California container. Therefore, they had to be reimbursed on a commingled rate. But SB 96 said no more commingled. Then what happened? Well, then the department comes out with a new commingled rate. This was effective July 1st, 2014. The reverse vending machine not only gets to purchase commingled, it gets to be reimbursed commingled, which was a feature that was statutorily removed by SB 96. I sent a letter to the deputy director in charge of recycling. He never responded. Just prior to his leaving and retirement, I sent him a letter asking if I would get a response, and he had a branch chief respond to me who simply said that it was required in regulation. Well, statute trumps regulation. If you've eliminated the ability of all recyclers to purchase on a commingled basis, then you've eliminated the ability of the machine to buy. That should have happened. But it didn't. One thing that we do know when we study the lobbying reports is that in 2013-2014, rePlanet averaged $90,000 in their lobbying expenses. And then we see in pretty much 2014, we see their contribution.